Since 1983, FAME has helped business and education work for Maine. Contact the authority, the Finance Authority of Maine.
Welcome. This is our Afterthoughts segment where we keep our guests around from our broadcast show to do another special segment and spend another 10 or 12 minutes or so on the web. Today we're talking about the destination events business sector, if you will. And with us today we have Andy Shepard, CEO, Maine Winter Sports Center, Ollie Wilder, Program Manager of PopTech in Camden, Todd Gabe, Professor of Economics, University of Maine, and Walt Elish, who's the President of the Aroostook Partnership for Progress. So, thanks for sticking around. Good discussion, I think, and we had examples of some real positive events, both the Maine Winter Sports Center events and also PopTech, about how they can really not only be successful events in and of themselves, but also have that economic impact for the region and the state. And then we were kind of launching into broader stuff. I want to talk about venues a little bit too. I'm just saying, if you've ever lived in Maine at all and ever been to a conference, there's only a handful of places you can go for a conference, I think, of any size. And if you get beyond, what, 500 people? I don't know. Where do you go? Is that something that we should be investing in? What do you think from your experiences? Should the state be investing in that, or is that just, is there a place for an entrepreneur to take that and run? I don't know.
You know, if you look at the opportunities that present themselves in Aroostook County, it would be hard to imagine that if we had a 500 capacity, 500 person capacity facility in Aroostook County, that would be a successful business model. Right. There are certainly other parts of the state where that could work. And I think, for me, it's understanding what the strengths are of a given region. In Aroostook County, the strength is its outdoor heritage. You have an abundant capacity of inns, beds and breakfast, hunting lodges, those sorts of things. That's the experience that Aroostook County would present to people. And that's a different experience from what you're going to find in a lot of places, and that, I think, is the strength of Aroostook County. If you're in Camden, if you're in Portland, or if you're in Bethel, the business model might be different, and the opportunities as a result might be different. I could imagine an alpine resort that has a year-round resort destination of alpine skiing, golf, the outdoor resources of Western Maine, that you could attract people. Right.
And you just throw in a casino, then we're set, right?
Well, that's an entirely separate discussion. But, when you look around the world, you find a lot of very rural, isolated places that are very successful. And it's because they have something that's demonstrably and remarkably different than what other people can offer.
So it is building on that uniqueness.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would add to that, if somebody wanted to come and build a 2,000-seat auditorium in our area, we wouldn't say no. We'd say, great, we can think of some things to use that for. But would it have the charm of the Camden Opera House? Would it have that, the sense
Getting
of
back
a
to
place?
just what you're talking about.
Right. Exactly, that you get. That's one of the reasons people come. Yes,
but
sometimes
with your conference, you have to cobble things together to get spaces, but is that part of the, once again, the charm, I guess?
It is for the people who come.
Yeah.
For the people organizing it, it can be, it's something you chafe against sometimes.
Right. Well, you call it. I mean, in Camden, they call it the whole town becomes the conference center. It becomes this. They have these different little venues all over, and the town becomes part of the event itself.
Right. And I think we're on the one hand really grateful to all the folks in Camden who helped make it that way, and at the same time happy that we're able to provide something of an influx.
That's another thing I wanted to ask about. It just reminded me too. I wanted to ask about just volunteers. How important are? Actually, I was watching the Bill Green coverage of the Rumford, and they said, it's all about the volunteers. That's how this thing actually runs. It's how it gets. Will these things succeed if we didn't have the volunteer base?
No. Okay. In a very easy answer, no. And
they're cheap, right?
Right, yeah,
He's done the math with it. Yeah, volunteers are good.
Well, and that is what creates the sense of place for the Europeans who come, is the quality of our volunteers. The reason that Maine has 2 World Cups and Lake Placid has none is the quality of our volunteers. It's that simple.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the Europeans, when they come to Aroostook County, they know, they know that the events will be professionally organized. They'll be all the athletes and the officials will be warmly received. Things will work on time. There will be big crowds, and there'll be friendly crowds. And that's not something everyone can offer.
Okay, let me ask the volunteer question, and anybody can jump into it.
Right.
I think they're critical to these things really working well. And the longer the event goes, do you start burning out your volunteers? I mean, we've all seen events where,
Yeah.
oh man, it's you're in your 20th year, and it's like, oh my God, how am I going to scrape together the people?
Well, there are different...
Early on, it's exciting.
There are different characters of events, though, and something like PopTech is so... The content is so interesting, and the program is so jam-packed, and the volunteers do get to see a good deal of that they tend to hang in there. They really do.
And they don't have to pay $3,000 then.
That's true. And
where do I volunteer?
I mean, some of these people actually fly in to volunteer from other places. It's not all local volunteers.
Oh, really?
It's a little different in that
that
sense.
Oh, that's cool.
And so being a volunteer is actually in demand, which we're very grateful for, and they're amazing people, and they definitely make a huge difference.
Is it the business community? How do they get involved?
Well, a lot of them allow their employees to volunteer. We were just talking about that this morning. One of the gentlemen who's with one of our local companies was at a meeting this morning where for the next 2 weeks, he's pretty much almost 80% of his time is with the World Cup, and his employer is allowing him to do that. So the employers are actively engaged. As Andy indicated, this is a community-wide event, Aroostook County-wide event. And it just so happens we have Prescott and Fort Kent being the focus, but both the whole county and the whole community is embracing both of these events, and without the volunteers, it'd be pretty difficult. And I think if we were going to do this every year with the World Cup, and it might be kind of difficult, but hosting a World Cup every maybe 3 years or 4 years, where you can motivate all those volunteers again to really get excited.
Just the infrastructure of it is amazing.
And I know during the program you talked about the role for state government.
Yes.
And I really think the investment needs to be made locally, because you have all these people that are investing their time, the business community, the sponsors. So I think that really, again, I don't think you can underestimate how important it is that the community support these events, because even if the state had a stronger hand in these events, unless you have the local commitment, they're not going to be successful.
Yeah, my experience with it has been that it would be successful if the state were coming forward with dollars, if we had some, and said, here you go, and then left it alone. It's
well, and the state,
they usually don't leave it alone when they give you the dollars.
The state did that to a certain degree with the Fort Kent World Cup. We received the state's tourism grant this year.
There you go. So that's a good example.
And very helpful.
How much was that?
I think it was $50,000.
Yep.
So, very helpful. The operating budget for each of our World Cups is in excess of $1 million.
See, and that $50,000, that's the return on investment thing that we've got to figure out. If we know what that really is, then we can tell our legislators, no, we want you to spend that. If it's 7 to 1 or whatever, if you're getting $7 for every time we spend one of those one of those bucks on your event, I'm saying, man, let's figure out how to invest more in that. That's a real return. And
we've seen a similar effect with, I mentioned the JUICE conference on the creative economy before. That got a huge boost early on from the Department of Economic and Community Development, the Maine Arts Commission, and Bangor Savings Bank, public-private partnership. And
that's a sponsor of this show. Do you know that?
All the better. And so, and really, I think that's a crucial role that the state can play. When something is starting, when there's a budding effort happening, that's the time to come in and say, hey, let's give this a little kick. Let's give it a little boost. And if you look at the JUICE conference now, it's about to be in its 3rd biennial edition this November.
Well, it's so important. It's interesting that the Maine, everybody knows the Maine Technology Institute. I mean, if you're in research and development at all and any kind of technology businesses, they have their hand, they're putting that seed money in. It's such an important agency, and it gets its funding, and it uses it well. They have competitive grants. I think it gets back to what you're talking about. If we had a focus just on this kind of destination event kind of management, and the grants were just for that, instead of competing for maybe within the tourism dollars, because it's so small. Well, maybe there's a way to do that. And then it gets it at that early stage and really seeds them.
Well, there's certainly a role for the government to play. Some of that might be financial, some of it might be resource allocation, helping to promote events, things like that. But there definitely is a role for the business community in Maine to play in supporting these as well, and acknowledging the importance that these events have on not only the culture of Maine and the culture of these individual communities, but the economy. Anthem has come on board as a gold sponsor for our World Cup. The sponsorship that they've given us is a significant contribution, will make both of these events possible. Now, are they going to sell a lot more insurance because of this? Probably not. But they're doing this because they recognize that this is important to the state's economy. They're an important player in the business community, and they need to step up.
And I think it's like any other business model. The ones, if you invest in the seed money, you do the research, you start it, and the ones that are going to succeed over time. they're going to become, and some won't. Some events are going to flush out. Some work
Right.
better than others. You know, that kind of thing. So that's a final question I want to ask before we wrap up is just want to ask you about taxes and tax policy. How does that impact this in terms of well, the sales tax issue in particular? Start with that one. Does that you know, we had some tax reform issues that were floated or that actually were passed and repealed last year that may come back. Is that something that Augusta needs to pay attention to in terms of how it might impact events, hotel, lodging, meals, taxes, those kinds of things?
You know, at the risk of stepping on the third rail.
That's why we put it out there.
Yeah, there you go. You know, I at one point in my life lived in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and I had some experience with the you know, tourism industry there. The state had a certain tax, the county had a certain tax, and then the resort of Steamboat Springs had a certain tax. And a percentage of that was rolled back into promoting, maintaining, and developing the infrastructure in that community. And you know, that goes a long way towards making sure that whatever resources we have maintain their competitive advantage. Now, is now the time to introduce something like that into Maine? You know, maybe not. But we do know that that model works in other places, and at some point we should revisit.
Is that what you're talking about? Do you guys agree that if that money can be set aside and designated for rolling back in?
I think there would be support from the lodging and restaurant industry for that if they knew that their monies were going to be focused.
I'll let you go tell the Caribou.
Yeah. Right, I think.
Right.
I think.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when the last in the tax reform, that was the big issue was.
Right.
Is it worth that amount? So I don't know. And then from an economic point of view,
I was going to say, you know, the $10 million impact of these events, most of it, a good chunk of it, is retail spending, at restaurants, spending at lodging establishments where you have that 7% meals and lodging tax. So when you talk about return on investment from the state's perspective, that's their big return, is this additional spending in retail business.
right? Okay. All right, we're going to wrap it right there. Once again, we're out of time. We could just go on and on with this, of course, but and looking forward to watching both of your events this year. And
Thank you.
Seeing how it turns out.
Hope you come up and join us.
I'd love to. Absolutely. Thanks so much. Thanks.
you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.